Hi, friends. I'm Quaker host Eric, and I am so placid today to welcome you to We Love Quaking, the Quaker Hour. Here on We Love Quaking, we discuss the simple life and the gift of simplicity that, via the means of shaking and quaking, we attain every day as the bread loaf we are baking with our piles of hay all around us, keeping us warm at night. Now, let's take a moment for me to read this advertisement from our sponsor. Quaker brand Simplicity Simplifier and Simplification Simplify Machine is the simplification machine you need today to ensure that your expression of being doesn't become too complicated. So, go out and buy one of those today, friends. Thanks for listening to that ad for the Quaker brand Quake Slot Simplifier, the simplicity making machine that will simplify even the most complex non-simplicities. Today I'd like to welcome our guest, a simplicity expert. Please welcome Dr. Judith Thompson. Hi, I'm very pleased to meet you here today. So you're an expert on simplicity, is that right? Yes? I'm a Quaker, and we are known as, of course, the simple people. We are thus known for good cause. It's because of our simplicity. Thanks, Judith. That's wonderful news. Tell us more about what being a simplicity expert entails. I ensure that we simple people remain simple. I go around to everybody's house and I remove the complexity. You don't need this, you don't need that. Those things are too complicated. Why do you do that, simplicity expert Judith Thompson? Simple. Because people pay me to. And why do you suppose they pay you, simplicity expert Judith Thompson? Simple. Because simplicity is valuable. Wow, those are very simple answers you're giving. I'm Dr. Judith Thompson, simplicity expert. How did you know the next question I was going to ask was, why should we listen to you? I didn't. But it's simple. Oh, you're done? Yes. Yes, I am. That was all I had to say. Simple, complete, perfect, infinitely valuable. These are the ways of simplicity expert Judith Thompson. So, hi, Winston's mom. Did I miss you? Well, I have a typing at 9 o'clock. My original title of this was Killing Time with Eric. But, well, actually, my original title was Come Kill Time with Eric. And then I thought, no, because then the title would have both come and kill in it. And then, as I retitled it to Killing Time with Eric, I found myself singing, "'Tis a gift to be simple, 'tis a gift to be free, 'tis a gift to touch you right upon your knee." 'Tis a gift to be quaking, 'tis a gift to be quack. And the Quaker quake with her mouth in the huck. Ba 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 ba. It's a nice song. Quakers have a nice song there. I like their song. I like the message of it. I like the Aaron Copland-esque American classical music-y kind of vibe of it. It's good stuff. It seems like kind of the first truly American song. Simple Gifts. Thank God. We've been all huddling in terror here in the corner because there's a possum over there. Could you shoo it away for us, please? The time does deserve to die. Yeah. There's this constant seesaw battle between pleasant experiences and purposeful engagement. No, we need him, Siegfried. He's the only one who's brave enough to shoo away the possum. Anyway, tis a gift to be simple, tis a gift to be free, tis a gift to be here where I want to be. All true. All the things in my life that are simple aren't problems. It's just the complicated things in my life that are problems. What I need is more simplicity in the sense that one of the big problems I have is that I never want to have to manage myself beyond the scope of totally disconnected to now or right now. So I'm fine with managing myself like in a calendar and stuff and using things like that and to good effect. And I'm fine with experiencing right now. But where SI natively takes you, I'm not good at. Namely, it natively takes you to okay, what do I have coming up today? I've got this, and then that means I've got these chunks of time available to decide now about what to do with them. Barring any intervening that makes that not possible. If you're any above SI, though, you suck at that. If you're in any SI axis is conscious and your NE's above your SI, you suck at that. You never want to determine what you're going to be doing outside of the things you definitely have to do. Good morning, Rachel Lapalosa. We both went to bed quite early last night. It's not shocking that she's up this early because she's sick and, she's been sleeping a lot. But it's also not necessarily the case that that's actually Rachel. I'll believe it when I see her in her other account. Data Days. Welcome to Data Days. Hi. Get your badge, get your pamphlet, get your packet. Here you go. We're going to be starting right at 6 p.m. sharp, so mingle until then. the bar over there to the left. Dollars or beers are $2, and wine is $4. You were sweating most of the night. You were sweating to the oldies. Apparently, my immune system made advances towards Stalingrad during the night. Yes, I did just compare my immune system to the Nazis. Huh. Well, the thing is, Annie does its work with a combination of SE and SI data. And then it checks its work against NI kinds of knowing. So if I want to make up a divergent story that has the whole point is to highlight distinctions between what's expected and what happens. I'm going to start with something that's particular around me, which limits the scope of the universality of it. Like, this is the story of, it's going to involve a Tootsie Pop. But I don't want to say the obvious thing, a boy that has a Tootsie Pop. So I'll just deviate from it. This is the story of a Tootsie Pop that fell into a puddle of radioactive waste and gained consciousness accordingly. So now, instead of having a more conventional thing, or something a little less conventional, it's also the story of a boy who fell into radioactive waste, but it had the opposite impact. It caused him to lose consciousness and become very delicious. The complicated intervening factor here is that the boy's parents were practical. And what they wanted the court to do was to legally define the radioactive but conscious and sentient Tootsie Pop now as their son, and to legally define the body of their son, lacking consciousness, still breathing and stuff, only now very sweet and delicious, as a Tootsie Pop. Because, being practical, and since they made the thing, they'd rather eat their now delicious son than let him go to waste. So, in that story, I demonstrated expert intuition by, but I guess the NI part of it for me is knowing what's not surprising. So, hi, Shuffler. So the thing is, that's what happens is I go, okay, I see something in my SE, it's a Tootsie Pop. I know things about Tootsie Pops, they're candy, for example, and that they're not living, and they don't have consciousness. But I'd already gone to the initial NI thing of, okay, well, I don't want it to be a boy with a lollipop, so, but I still had the boy in my recently opened tabs category, you know? So I said, okay, well, also, it's not that weird how, like, candy comes to life or something. That's not unusual enough. And the boy should be included somewhere in here because you can do something interesting with that since it was expected as well. And so, the natural thing is symmetry there. That's, I guess, an NI kind of knowing where you say, well, what would be symmetrical? And then you realize that's kind of funny. You toss in the parents at the end because it's just sort of suggested, you know, by, well, if he's a boy and now he's candy, you know, he must have parents. What would parents do? Well, what they wouldn't do is go to court to have the candy legally declared their son and have their son legally declared candy so that they could eat him so that he wouldn't go to waste, having justified it by the fact that, well, they made him, so they're responsible for that physical matter. Okay, so that's exactly what would never happen. So that's where you go, because it's taking advantage of NI knowings about what's expected. Like I was thinking about this fun question here, which is, so I've watched all these fucking Netflix shows. Started watching one of them, and I've been thinking also a lot about how to establish and sustain momentum in narratives that are meant to be consumed as entertainment. So the thing started with 3 people running in terror, and it's not clear what they're running from, but it is clear that they're panicked and that shit's going down. Okay, like helicopters are flying overhead, and they're like, come on, we gotta go. All right, so I just sort of paused it right there. I guess I didn't literally pause it, but as it proceeded forward, I began more thinking about, so when people decide how they want to write a show for Netflix or something, they've got 2 considerations and concerns they need to worry about, among many, but I'm going to highlight these 2. One being the momentum that carries the audience forward through and makes a given thing binge-worthy. And then 2, the quality that's also necessary, though, for it to be binge-worthy is not merely that it be well-paced, but that it also be surprising. So as soon as I started watching that, I started thinking, okay, if I were going to start a show with people running like that, well, how would I make it surprising? And I started basically thinking about all the different ways in which that ends up playing out. In this case, it played out as zombies, and it was just like, okay, you work with an awareness of where the edges of boring are, and try to avoid them. Try to avoid banging your shins into them when you're making media. This is intended to be entertaining, not informative. Symmetries and conservation of thoughts are 2 fundamental laws of ancient mantra systems. Conservation of thoughts are valid in classical, relativistic, and quantum theory. Symmetry is what we see at a glance based on the fact that there is no reason for any difference. But I mean, the thing to note is that's a very receiver frame of reference regarding symmetry. That symmetry is possible to create is also the case, and it's one of a set of possible artistic choices. It is a much more action frame regarding symmetry, right? That's a very NI way of looking at symmetry. Question about your dominant function defines the default perspective. How do TE, TI, FE, FI differ for an INTJ, NI first low res, and ISTJ, SI first high res? Well, they don't differ. It's just that because an ISTJ knows with SI, he's or she is retaining actively things that have worked before as strategies that allow them that they can, TE can be modular like that. I don't know. I've never worked on one of these things before, but I know how compressors work, and I can apply that knowledge to this, which has a similar kind of compressor. Is a way for TE to shortcut some of the work. So all I need to do now is distinguish how this compressor is different from that compressor and whether that difference is relevant to what I'm trying to do here. And I'm going to have to do that by engaging with it directly. I can't do it by simply looking at the map of it. Now, the thing is, for standardized things like compressors, so let's look at, to answer this question better, that's a big question you're saying there. It's a big question, but to answer it better, let me talk about the COVID test I administered to both my dad and Rachel, or that I helped them to do. It came with instructions, and it showed the contents of the box. It had this empty plastic little tube thing that turned into a squirt bottle. It had a pouch of liquid that you're supposed to pour into there, and then it had the test strip thing, and it had the swab. So the instructions say, open the pouch, pour the water into the little tube, take the swab out of the thing, swab your nose, put it into the water in the little tube, put the lid back on the little tube, it turns it into a squirt little dropper, and then squeeze 3 drops onto the testing strip. The instructions, though, they indicated, first and foremost, that these are the contents of the box, and second, the first step of using content 1, the pouch of liquid, to put that liquid into the other thing. However, the actual contents of the box didn't have that pouch of liquid, but the little squirty thing had liquid in it. So I intuited what anybody who gave it enough thought would intuit, which is that this instructions is for a previous incarnation of this thing, that they had those two things separate and made you do that. But at some point someone said, we'll just pour it in there for them. And this is the second generation of these kinds of things, but they still use the first generation of instructions, the little instruction booklets. It's conceivable, though, that somebody who is really, I guess, maybe TE polar, I'm not entirely sure, but somebody who's really not trying to use their own intuition or figure outiness, but merely trying to SE what they TI understand the instructions to mean, that they might get to step 1 and say, I can't get any further than that because my box doesn't have all the stuff in it it's supposed to have. So since the first step involves something that doesn't exist, I can't go any further. That would be a very TI approach to this situation that doesn't have any intuition with it. So anyway, in order to determine that I just need to skip that first step because they made that part of it moot, I had to think a little bit about how the whole thing works. The whole thing works by you get the goo from your nose into this liquid and mix it around and then drop that on to this dropper. So once I determined that was the process mechanism, the fact that this thing had liquid in it was sufficient to inform me that I could just skip that first step and it would still work fine. So for SITE, they're going to be like that about a lot of stuff, which is to say, my previous experience has told me this problem or system or whatever that I'm engaging to attain solvency seems different than my previous experience, so I'm going to TE it with my operational value. I'm going to pay attention to it, how it actually is, and how it. A lot of TEing is observation of everything first, and then figuring out how to get from point A to point B. For NITE, it's there's an understanding holistically that of how something works, probably, that, I mean, it's also going to frame where you direct your solvency efforts. So SIDOM is going to direct their solvency efforts towards things that are important to solve because of how they link to their own experience. And NIDOM is going to be motivated in their solvency efforts more by linking their solutions to their impacts, because NI and SE are on the same axis, But it's a tricky question to answer because the difference lies in the fact that INTJs have better intuition. And as a consequence, when they know about the same kind of things that ENTPs think about and ideate about. Whereas ISTJs, they know about what they've decided to learn about. There's something like when little children are taught to read, intuitives attain whole language acquisition of reading before phonics. And certain types of people, I don't know exactly what the typology link is here, if it is to TI or if it's to something else or whatever, but the majority of the population of students needs phonics to learn to read. And the minority of the population doesn't need to be explicitly taught to read. They just need to be read to while they're looking at the book, and they'll learn to read by themselves. Just by being exposed to the words being spoken aloud, and while the words are in front of their eyes, they don't need to be taught to read. So the thing is, the reason why people who need to be taught to read need to be taught to read is because it's got to be because SI is above, SI is above NI and NE in your stack thing. Because it's like, the non-intuitive way to learn how to read is to experience each thing many times so that you don't forget it. But unless you consciously attend to metaphysical matters with SI, it doesn't retain them because that's low resolution data. So in that regard, NI is more core to who I am as a learner, an ideator, just a person engaging in the world than SI is, because while I, as a creative person, rely on SI for now give me some blue paint, now give me some red paint. I'm not painting a house, I'm painting a painting. So the thing is, people who learn by a not whole language acquisition like that, it's because their attentional stack says, I will decide what I know by willfully attending to it and learning it. That's the SI above NE frame of reference. NI says, I don't decide what I know. I know because my intuition tells me. So instead of willfully learning something as a operating principle for knowledge, I expect to not have to willfully learn things to know how they're useful in a low-res kind of way. And in fact, if I do have to willfully learn things and I'm an intuitive, which is say NI or NE in the first or second slot, then I'll find those things boring and not worth learning, because I want even low-res data to be low-res optimal. Low-res data that's low-res optimal is data that makes it unnecessary for me to know all these particulars about this thing. So things like, if there's this thing called the clutch that I push down with my left foot to shift gears, and that when the car's working properly, that clutch successfully manages the integration of the different gears. But that when I'm having trouble with the accelerating up to a certain speed in a given gear in order to shift to the next one, that could mean I'm too highly geared, namely I'm in fourth gear but I'm only going 10 miles an hour, or it could mean that my clutch is going out. And that get certain kinds of experiences, I don't need to know the specifics of how and why a clutch works the way it does exactly. I don't need to know the specifics of why it is that too large a gear makes you meow, to know that I can distinguish between a problem that is particular to my momentary behavior, that I'm in third gear when I should be in first gear, versus a problem that's mechanical to the car. Those kind of pieces of knowledge are optimized for low-res purposes. I can eliminate the need to know a lot of specific details about this because I've successfully understood conceptually what's going on here. And whenever I need information about this thing, I can reliably expect what I understand conceptually to inform me about it to the extent that I need to be informed about it. Since I'm not trying to fix it myself, I'm merely trying to diagnose whether I need to take it to the shop. You dig? Very flimsy fabric. Gossamer. I don't know if you guys know this. I mentioned it before, but I actually fly on gossamer wings. The FE, I think, in INTJ and ISTJ, for INTJs, FE is more, and they more successfully treat it as a non-social dynamic system that they can understand through their own frames of reference with TE, because it's about low-res data, and at least their knowledge function is consistent with that. So it's like Jonathan Visanti's hilarious. And you might think FE and hilarity go hand in hand, but not necessarily, because he's analyzed, I think what he's partially done is he's analyzed the mechanics of how I be hilarious, and then he's applied them to specific situations. But, you know, he may have analyzed other hilarious people before and already been hilarious. I'm not sure. I think he probably has a heuristic for FE, which is determine how they are engaging and engage with them how they're engaging will make them like you more. It would be like a rule of thumb you could generally apply, and generally won't run afoul of things if you don't make other massive social mistakes, like not understand that applying this is appropriate if you're having a conversation, but not if you're watching somebody on stage or something like that. As long as you don't make that kind of glaring FE mistake, it's probably a good rule of thumb. So I think INTJs are a little bit better at FEing from other people's perspectives. At least have the capacity to be. They're also the kind of FE condemnation they get is less damning. So INTJs, when they get condemned for FE problems, they're likely to be termed robotic and or to get in trouble for always the same reason on FE grounds, namely that they've noted what's universally wrong with what you're saying and or doing, and pointed out that if you really want that goal, that outcome, you should meow. But meow runs counter to their own particularist knowledge of themselves. It's subjective because you're knowing by NI, and they get all offended. The perfect example being Judy tells you how excited she is to become a professional singer one day, and the INTJ says, "You have pitch problems. You should get to go to a vocal coach." And they get all butthurt about it, you know. And then everyone's like, "You can never know how to read the room. What are you doing? Couldn't you tell how excited she was? Now's not the time to say that. God, it's her birthday, and everybody she loves just died. Now's not a good time for that." SZ Panak, I broke you lie. Spinac, I broke you lie. Well, I mean, I don't think when INTJs are scolded by, I don't think people really get scolded by the tribe, right? What happens is individuals scold other individuals, and they use the existence of the tribe or social norms as a justification for why you need to change your behavior. There is no actual tribe that meows. I'm guessing ENFP, but I don't really have enough information to go on. You know, Rachel and I, because we're both FE, and it's in our dribble and shoot slots, you might call them. Your second slot is your dribble, and your third slot is your shoot. But because FE is in our dribble and shoot chunk there, it means we're both constantly operating under the basic principle that I'm a team player. I'm not going to put what I want ahead of being a team player most of the time. And in fact, what it ends up meaning is that, for me at least, as seventh slot, I don't even get what it means to want something, really. What I want is not going to be significant in how I experience something unless I'm alone. Slouching toward Gomorrah. Canceling exclusion and reputation destruction are archetypal female bullying strategies? Oh. Well, what they actually are, canceling exclusion or ostracizing somebody, and reputation destruction, they're all FE things. They're all ways of engaging people's perceptions about each other, social perceptions, as a means of holding people accountable. There's nothing feminine about that, though, or female at all. It's instead an intentional thing. And when we mistake, and this is what we've done for all of human history, is insist that elephants are just this slimy part right here. There should be no linkage whatsoever between social dynamic systems and gender. To the extent that there's a linkage between attaining solvency in civilized ways and attaining solvency in uncivilized ways, it would be the case that, to the extent that expresses along gender lines, it would express that women attain outcomes in more civilized ways because they're less capable of using violence. Of course, that's not, those vectors are so coarse and broad and so forth that we are always mistaken to try to use those in explaining things. Because explaining things is one thing you can do with language. You can do a lot of things with language, right? You can explain things, though, is one thing you can do. If you are explaining things, then you need to produce an explanation. And explanations have certain things about them that make them explanations and not other things. So the problem with what you said there is that it's being mad at women dressed as an explanation. Being mad at women is really just disliking the intersection of general narratives about mating stuff, your particular narratives about mating stuff, your particular experience about mating stuff, and your particular experience of being perceived as somebody who engages with mating stuff. So it's like, if you don't feel like you're getting any pussy, then that's the only time people, if you're not getting laid, the only time people talk about how bad women are is when they're not getting laid, or not getting laid in a way that's satisfying to them because maybe they're with somebody who is mistreating them or something. And people like to have a thing everybody can get mad about with them. They don't want, like, I don't know your girlfriend Georgianne, so, and I'm not really going to get that mad at her unless you tell me a big bunch of particular details of your story that make me mad at her over time. That doesn't scale, right? It doesn't scale. You can't share your satisfying, juicy anger party with very many people unless you do a lot of your own work, because none of it generalizes. Once we've collapsed it down to, no. Yeah, it's Georgianne who sucks, but she sucks in ways that impact my self-esteem as a man. Therefore, women suck. And now let me talk to other people about how much women suck, because then we can all agree on our anger and we can share in our juicy gotchas and stuff like that, right? Whereas if we actually talked about something real, we wouldn't have that commonality of ground to be angry about. Because we're each angry for our own particular reasons. And none of what we're saying is that I'm angry for these reasons. I'm projecting harder than movie projectors right now. Yes, do you think I'm projecting my own insecurity right now? That, in fact, I'm the one who's very insecure about women and doesn't like them. And that's why I'm saying what I'm saying about reductive gender archetype stuff. To clarify, because that I don't think you don't like women. Oh, then you don't think I'm projecting. Or what do you think I'm projecting then? The thing is, one projects something. So if I am projecting, what am I projecting exactly? I'm an Infp. Broccoli. Please read your much more interesting question above. Okay, let me look at it. Where is it? For this to be projection, it would have to also be his opinion, but he's arguing the other position. Not opinion, some kind of belief, conscious or unconscious. That's not a question. Oh, he said, interesting question. Above, please. Well, I mean, look. Some people prioritize a lot in their narrative stack, mating narratives. And if they also, in their experience, have found the mating process difficult, then it's going to cause you ontological distress. For some people, it's going to express meow way or meow way or meow way. For me, it expressed, I was one of those people, for me it expressed not as having any problem with women, but simply concluding that my best course of action was to be the guy who never tries to get on you, or anybody, so that I could have women around me, because I found them good company, and a lot more fun than a sausage party, but I wouldn't have to worry about the complexities of mating rituals, because I was hammering into myself this narrative about my own lack of viability as a reproductive option. And there were a lot of things that were unhealthy about my cluster personality expression. But I never had a problem with chicks. I never blamed chicks. I always blamed myself. It's possible to blame chicks, but that doesn't really mean anything, because you're never dealing with chicks. You're always dealing with a chick who's a person, and foremost, an intentional configuration is going to define them way more than their vagina. So, I mean, don't get me wrong. Their vagina is very important. And it is critical. It's like a necessary but insufficient condition to being a woman. But being a woman doesn't tell us nearly as much about the person than being a meow, 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 meow type, right? It doesn't tell us anything interesting about the person, except that, in theory, yes, maybe I might fuck that person, depending on circumstances. That's the other thing it tells us. Like, okay, I'm going to tell you about this person whose name is neutral. It's like Aaron. Which one is it? I don't know. And I'm going to just tell you about them, and then I'll tell you, oh, and they're a woman. Okay, so in theory, if I were single and I encountered them and I liked them and or whatever else and a bunch of other things, then maybe I'd fuck that person. I mean, there's just not very much information. It's not particularly useful information. Because probably I wouldn't, even though they are a woman. But it just, yeah, that's the only thing it really unlocks or changes is that it's not entirely impossible that I'd fuck them. You know? Whereas I don't fuck males, even if I wanted to now, I've got in place a reasoning that precludes me from doing so because, well, it's like this episode of Naked and Afraid the other day, in which this lady was now in a lesbian relationship but had been engaged to this dude before, and now she's on Naked and Afraid with this naked dude in the wilderness, and she's talking about how it's a big issue potentially between her and her girlfriend because her girlfriend's inherently unsettled about whether she still is attracted to men. That's the problem with identifying actively as bisexual, right? Is that if you do that, you're imposing an ontological, or I'm sorry, an epistemological burden on whatever kind of partner you're with. Namely that your needs that's something that doesn't stay put, right? So Rachel doesn't have to worry about me suddenly turning gay, because for me that's something about me that stays put. It's a status that was determined a long time ago and is not subject to change. If you're identifying as bisexual, what you're saying is that's not something that stays put. And so you create an additional challenge for your partner regarding how to map what to expect from you in the realm of being a partner. And being a partner and having sex with you, or if you don't have sex with them, then you're just friends. The only thing gay about me is my unslakable thirst for cock. Look, I know I'm sucking a lot of dicks here, but I'm as straight as an arrow. What do you mean, what's that? That's all man seed. From the top of my head all the way to the bottom of my chin, covered in cum. Because when I really want to just lay back, you know what? It's my time. It's Eric time. What I like is a nice relaxing bukkake, where I just sit back in a dental chair and dudes jerk off on my face. That makes me feel like, oh, just Calgon, take me away. Wow, my skin is so shiny now. And I smell so disgusting. I smell so gross and my skin is so shiny. Anywho, slouching towards Gamora, maybe you don't have any problem with chicks. Maybe it's just you making a tone-deaf observation regarding archetypes. That's possible. Maybe I was a little premature and jumped into the conclusion that you hate chicks just because you discussed the fact that they were linked to female archetypes, which I don't dispute they historically have been. So sure. I might have sent in my Panzer Division to shoot tank bullets at you before I knew what you were. But that's just par for the course around here. So just accept it and let's move on. That's just how Eric rolls. There's there's some movement over there. Fire! Panzer divisions, they all shoot their tank bullets at this thing. And then we find out that it was just a bunny rabbit. Wasn't the whole framework of the video NETI, since it was based on coming up with and dismissing potential oppositional positions? Well, that's why okay, so what that sounded like to me was TI that had been TE'd. Like, there was a total lack of consciousness about the fact that this operation you can execute, drawing a distinction, had an operational architecture. So he'd say, okay, look, I tell you I see a ghost. Therefore, if you don't believe in ghosts, you either think I'm lying or you think I'm wrong. But of course, in actuality, you said you see a ghost. I don't think you're lying. And that's not enough reason for me to affirm that ghosts exist. Narrative stack? Well, what I mean by that is like, people's distress expresses along the fault lines of their attentional manners, not the other way around. So, when Rachel's distressed, she attains knowledge about externalities from external sources in order to understand the distress. If the distress is actually something that's much more particular than that, like she's hungry, she'll simply never process that into her epistemologies. So it's like she'll never process that. The problem is that she's hungry right now. She'll process it as, I'm not feeling whatever. Might this represent a larger issue? Might this represent not simply that we hit a wave in the boat, but that we've driven the car onto water? Or that we've been driving the car on water this whole time, and now it's starting to reveal its structural deficiencies. She wants to frame things in terms of their fundamental soundness, because being an INFJ means never thinking your experience in the moment matters. Neither your feelings nor what you particularly personally know from experience matters in any kind of expression of self, which is going to be knowledge first. So I lost track of where I was going with that. Somebody should have tied a rope to me so that they could pull me back to the surface when I got here. Force. Let's force everyone to do everything. Yeah, 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 yeah. We all like forcing people to do everything, 'cause yeah, 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 yeah. If you don't, then I'll force you. And if you don't, then I'll force you. Look at me force you with forcey force. I'm pointing guns and of course, you're gonna have to do what I say, 'cause I'm using force today. That's the song that force users sing before they leave their house. Interesting that the police are referred to as the force. It's short for the police force. And that's a good name for it, right? Because that's what the police is. It is how society uses force in legitimate ways. It doesn't mean that every police use of force is legitimate, but it means that if it's not a police use of force, then chances are it's not legitimate unless excepting special circumstances. Boxers use force against each other, but that's legitimate and they're not the police. So Rain says, I'm just saying that there is most likely at least one person who lied about seeing ghosts. Oh, I'm sure plenty of people have lied about it. But I'm also sure that plenty of people haven't. The thing is, so the question about whether some people have lied about it isn't relevant as to whether or not authentic people who are being authentic in telling us their experience ought to be convincing to us. It's not convincing because some people lie. It's not convincing because it doesn't meet the necessary and sufficient conditions from being convincing. Of what they want to convince you of, anyway. They want to convince you to say those things that don't mean anything as though they did as well. Okay, Rain, geez, you know. Fine. You do know, okay? It's like, what's this ball there was like? Look at the colors of here, it's just like busting my ball. I know that, oh God. I said that right afterwards. I'm making myself more coffee if you're wondering where I went all of a sudden. Where I went to Bolivia to the coffee farms there. And I said, hello, may I speak to Juan Valdez, Bolivia? And 100,000 men stood up and said, sí? Oh, sí. Aquí? I said, which one of you is the Juan Valdez? Well, that's true. Some people are willing to deceive and some people are unwilling to deceive. Active deception is much more of a binary than most other things like that in language. In other words, it does cascade down more than other kind of language rules. People generally have either made a decision to not lie as a default or have not made that decision. It's not like anybody makes a decision to lie as a default. People become habituated to the expediency of dishonesty, perhaps, or choose to not engage the question, or just don't engage the question for stretches of their life. But it is something that if you have made a decision about, generally does cascade down. Like, most people, by default, don't lie, and thus you can tell they're uncomfortable when they do, to some extent. Success in everything from athletics to chest to the stock market boosts testosterone levels. Do you hear the tip-tap-a-tippin'? Those are my tippity-tip-tap-a-drums. Do you hear the tip-tap-a-tippin'? Those are my tippity-tip-tap-a-drums. Do you hear the tip-tap-a-tippin'? These are my tippity-tip-tap-a-drums. Do you hear the tip-tap-a-tippin'? These are the tappity drums. Are there people who lie who are not uncomfortable about it? Yeah, there are. But, and I don't doubt that there are people who are aware they're lying when they're lying and still not presenting discomfort about it. But I would suggest that probably most people who are able to tell lies convincingly, it's because at least while they're telling it, they're believing it. What they've really done to do is not so much lie convincingly as believe themselves when they're lying. Hey Nick, how you doing? It's been a while. Well, I mean, I don't really believe in white lies, because it's easier to just avoid the question. You can always avoid the question. I'm doing quite well. Feeling occasionally a little, meh, because I don't like slow progressing things when they take a long time to, and I'd like to see more progress towards success, I guess. But I'm also fairly, what's the word? Fairly at peace with a reality of a longer time frame. Like, these sort of things are measured in months and years, and as is my own development. And I'm only 50 years old, so my journey towards history's most famous person, well, it's a long journey. It's a journey of 10,000 miles. And thus far, I've only traveled 20 feet of that 10,000 miles. And it's taken me a long time to go that 20 feet. But I remain optimistic that at any moment now, I'm going to start walking faster. Just life stuff. Yeah, I mean, I've kind of moved away from what I previously did professionally, coaching, debate, and stuff. I still have a couple of clients that I teach, but I mostly avoid any kind of education stuff nowadays. I just do typing stuff and YouTube stuff, right? But it's not like I was really. It's not like it really. It's not. I'm not enabled to do that because I got successful enough to do that. And I'm enabled to do that because I don't have to pay any rent and stuff like that. Well, no, it's not easy to lie in competitive debate. You run the risk of being disqualified if you falsify evidence or something like that. Like, I mean, if you make up some shit and say this is a quote from person, and that's not true, then you'll be disqualified. You'll not just lose the round, you'll be done for the whole tournament. There's a few different kinds of rules violations like that that they'll disqualify you for. Rain, the thing is, when I don't read your questions, I'm probably not avoiding them. When I avoid questions, I am answering them. If I'm not answering your question, I'm not avoiding it. I just not answered it. To avoid a question is to answer it without answering it. In other words, it doesn't count as avoiding a question unless you think you've had a question answered. Eric, have you had strong FI detection avoiding questions? It's not always easy, and I am one who is quite good at sidewalking. Well, but the point is, you don't have any obligation to answer a question. So you can always just remain silent or say, I don't like talking about that, or I don't want to answer that, or whatever. It might be the case that the other person is going to conclude what you don't want them to conclude, but they can't claim to have concluded it because of your testimony. The thing is, what I'm talking about is being avoidant of the question on all of its fields, right? So the person who's asking a question has expectations that it be answered, and depending on the kind of question it is, it may be significant that for you that they feel as though their expectations have been met. Well, thanks, Nick. And I have no doubt that you'll still be around to say, hey, Eric, it's me, Nick. And I'll be like, hey, Nick, you were right. Now I'm the most famous person ever. Rachel asks, what should I wear? Eric, anything you wear makes it look great. Anything you wear looks great, or will make it look great. You will make it look great. I wouldn't say that. I'd say, what should you wear? Whatever clothes you choose to wear? I mean, why are you asking me? How do I know what the fuck you're supposed to wear? That's who's choosing clothes for your body. How should I know what you should choose? That's what I would say if Rich asked what I should wear. I'd say, I don't know. I'm not your closet. I don't even know what I should wear. How should I know what you should wear? I'm talking to you right now, Betting Tips 3000. You're famous. Most people are here because they want to hear our interview exchange that we're having right now. The Betting Tips 3000? The one that I've heard about while watching Talking with Famous People? He's famous. The point is that you become famous as soon as you participate in Talking with Famous People. And that people who haven't participated in Talking with Famous People, who are nevertheless well known, are merely celebrities. Betting Tips 3000, a genuine famous person. George Clooney, merely a celebrity. Who? Man, I'm super famous. Hi, everybody. What's going on? My name's Tiffany. all 5 hours. All right, you can't say either. I say either. You can't see them, Tiffany. They can see you, but you can't see them. What do you mean I can't say that? I can't say that. I want to say that. Okay, well, they're in text form over there. See? In that window over there? All I said. Well, Jermaine Cole says YouTube is basically Internet Hollywood. I thought that's Hollywood. So, is that like when you put a Yule log on the fire and it's a wonderful Christmas morning and you're opening your presents and you say, oh my God, I love this so much. Yes, Tiffany, that's right. That's exactly right. You nailed it. Nailed it. On the nose. Oh, is that almond milk? No, this is coffee, Tiffany. Where's my almond milk? You know, I demand almond milk first thing in the morning. My bad. Let me get you your almond milk. Filling it up. Okay, here you go, Tiffany. Here's your almond milk. I got it in your big stein like you like. Thank you. They're going to call almond milk that's spelled V-O-D-K-I, right? Oh, yeah. I got you. The 110 proof stuff, right? Excellent. That's my favorite kind of almond milk. Almond milk, extra strong flavor. Mm-hmm. Tiffany's on the all vodka diet. I just drink vodka. What else do you eat? I made those things yesterday. Those Frisco balls. That's right. I forgot you were the one who actually took over the cooking eventually. They were almost done, and then Tiffany showed up with Mindy and said, what are those things? And Mindy said, I think he's making his lunch. And he's doing it wrong. Give me the shiny things. So she wanted the tongs, you know. I said, but Tiffany, give me the shiny things. I gave them to her, and she flipped all the things over the last time. And I got to admit, she was really quick about it. But regardless, she's a real slave driver. That Tiffany. She requires you to instantly comply, or else she's just going to yell at you more. You're right. Swear to honor, you make a wise observation. Let me tell you my secret. How do I stay so fit on time, even though I eat whatever I want and drink whatever I want, whenever I want? The answer is butt sunning. Your butthole needs sun particles for you to survive and thrive as a full, healthy person. You can only get butthole sun particles if you put your butthole up to the sun, like this. Then you won't get scurvy. Thanks, Tiffany. Thanks for your beauty advice. You're welcome. Have you gotten any sun particles on your butthole today? No, I haven't, but I've got it on my schedule for later, don't worry, after the typing. No matter what. They both, they don't have it because they were smart and never got the vaccine. I'm loving it. I mean, I still don't seem to have it. Rachel has it. My dad has it. My daughter's had it multiple times now. But I think my immune system last night, as per the night before, successfully fought it off while I was sleeping. There's a big battle inside of me because when I went to bed, I thought, oh my God, I'm getting a fever for sure. And then when I got up, I'm fine. So go immune system. I'm a rooting for you on the sidelines here. White blood cells, here I cheer for you. Go ahead and kill those evil viruses. Hopefully, fingers crossed, my caregiving, self-care approach of if you smoke enough different things, then it'll never have a chance to take purchase in your lungs has worked out well. I wouldn't recommend it. I don't present it as medical information, but it's my feeling. This is how I feel about things. I feel as though by smoking, I'm making the environment for the virus less hospitable, while rewarding my lungs for doing a good job of sending them away. When they come a-calling, I've already instructed my lungs ahead of time. Shoo those bits away. We don't like your kind around here. And my lungs are extremely racist, so it works out great. Your whole family has had it, and you've been traveling a lot. You're currently living in Jamaica? Jamaica. Is that a Rasta form of Formica? It's like a cabinet top, but textured as though it were dreadlocks. To make it fundamentally, profoundly less useful. Why is my cutting surface all filled with uneven, random ridges and valleys? It's Rasta. Okay, but I'm trying to chop parsley. It's bad for my knife. It keeps getting stuck in all the little divots and shit. Hey, bro. That's how we chill in Jamaica. We make ourselves miserable with this inefficiency indefinitely from this point forward. Misery-inducing inefficiencies can suck my wee-wee. Yeah, exactly. Why would a virus want to take purchase in my lungs when there's some nice, juicy, non-smoker lungs nearby? Everybody knows viruses eat the juice from the juicy part of the lung that gets nice and dry and stiff through the curing process. But I'm not smoking. I'm just curing my lungs. Like you cure meats, okay? That's all. And nobody ever had any problems from curing their lungs, okay? Because through the magic of equivocation, that means they've healed whatever's wrong with them. Conclusions through the magic of equivocation. Through the magic of equivocation, we can make conclusions like this. Smoking is what's keeping me healthy, because smoking is really just curing your lungs. And curing your lungs implies there was something wrong with them, but no longer will be, or no longer is. So, accordingly, since I keep smoking, my lungs must be in a constant state of curedness. It just fell out and shit, And I have dental stuff I can put in there, but until it impacts my speech too much, I'm probably not going to get it all dealt with. I've gotten accustomed to sitting like this and mostly trying to show the side of my head. And, you know, I'm not... The point of this thing that I'm doing has never been about my face, okay? It never has been, never will be. Ideally, if I were more effective, I'd find some way to minimize the physical, visible presence of me as part of this whole thing, and get Rachel to read things that I write or something like that, or just have non-picture of the person saying it, have other pictures and say stuff over it. I'm much more effective inherently like that because, you know, I'm radio handsome. But I'm also Eric-y stupid, so, you know, I do things stupidly, and that's just how it is. We just all have to love and embrace it anyway. It's everyone's job is to say, Eric, you do things stupid, and that's just fine because you're just suffering from unavoidable Ericness. You people are like the good people who, even though there's this guy who got this disease that made him squirt water out of his skin occasionally and get everybody around him wet, you still hang out with him. And I'm like that guy who squirts water out of me all the time, but who also never even apologizes for getting you wet. I'm assuming you're here to play in my sprinkler. This is like an NI kind of visual joke skit. That isn't particularly funny, but would be exploiting the idea of somebody who doesn't NI adequately. Like, you got a birthday party, and you're waiting for a group of 3 kids whom you are expecting to arrive in bathing suits to arrive at this time. But the kids are a little bit late, and at that exact time, the kids are supposed to arrive. 3 people come to knock at your door who are like pamphleting about religion or whatever. And you don't, like maybe you're looking down at something. So, oh, you're here, good. Get out of here, kids, come out here. You're already in your bathing suits, I assume. And shoos them out to the children's birthday party and turns on the sprinkler. And the whole time, they're giving her lots of cues, but she's just so going forth ahead with her assumption, her previous intuition, which is that when the doorbell rings, the people you are expecting to arrive at the time when the doorbell rings, if the doorbell rings at that time, there's those people who have in fact arrived rather than some other people. It's saying she's so oblivious to changing realities that she ushers them all back out to the backyard and treats them as though they're in their bathing suits already, ready for this children's birthday party, and are the 3 friends that she's expecting. And then, you know, she goes back in the house, maybe she's still looking at her Reader's Digest or whatever, and the doorbell rings again, and she goes, what? She goes to the door, opens it, and this time she puts on her Reader's Digest to see who it actually is. She goes, how did you 3 get out front so quickly? You know, how did you 3 get back around to the front so quickly? And they're like, what do you mean? I just left you out there having fun at the party. And they say, well, we just got here. And then they walk outside, and the 3 religious people somehow have changed into bathing suits and are playing the sprinkler with the kid. It turns out they're like 2 smoking hot 19-year-old girls with big boobs, and one like studly guy with a 6-pack and his beach is like a surfer length swimming trunk things. Goodbye, Nick. Goodbye, good luck, and God bless. If you don't remember to eat plenty of cheese, I'm going to give you a list, a packet of excuse papers already pre-written. You got 8 days of forgetting about it ahead of you that are excused. Take that with you. Anyway, what else am I talking about? I'm talking about stuff that needs to say. Yeah, 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 like, hey, oh, hey, look at me. I'm exciting. That'd be so funny and ridiculous. It's, in the third slot, it's so, hey, look at me. You know? Mom, look at me. Look at me. Look what I'm doing. Hey. Can you imagine being stuck in that your whole life? That's yours truly. I've never gotten over saying, never stopped saying, but Mom, look what I'm doing. Look at me. Listen to what I have to say. But my mom was easily impressed, I think, also. But she wasn't easily impressed by comedy. What I said had to genuinely be funny to make her laugh. She wouldn't courtesy laugh for me or anything like that. But she found my observations that were not designed to be funny, but designed to be interesting or informative about things, actually interesting and informative. Rewarding that behavior, you know? Ain't no streamage long enough to take me away from you, girl. The thing is, this streamage has an expiration date. You can know exactly when this stream is going to end. It's going to end approximately 5 minutes. Well, so you can't know exactly. You can know approximately when the stream is going to end with much more closeness to the actual end time than you normally can, because I'm just killing time until typing that I have in an hour and 5 minutes from now. I'm just killing time. It's what I was, originally the title was going to be about killing time, but then I realized, oh, Eric, you're misframing this. What you need to remind everybody is that 'tis a gift to be simple, 'tis a gift to be free, 'tis a gift to be here where I want to be. Let's talk more about the Quakers. Some of our favorite people are the Quakers. We love their quakiness, their quaint and shaky, quick and quaky, fun and flaky ways. What's the best match for INFP? I'm going to say, perhaps, it ought to be ENTJ is possible, but ESTJ is also possible, actually. INFPs are not poorly suited for ESTJs, because the things that other people don't like about ESTJs, they understand not so negatively. They, being fourth slot TE, they appreciate the TE, and being dominant FI, they are not so concerned about the FE failures of eighth slot. 8th slot. You're so rotary? You'd like to drive a rotary engine? You want a Mazda RX-7 with its patented rotary engine? How can duality work? Duality works as, well, let's look at two people. Let's look at two types that are judgers to explore that important and valuable question. You're not a judger. Betting tips 3,000. You're a perceiver. But if you're a judger, then you are likely to be better off with your dual than what socionics calls the mirage type. Judgers who are with their duals enjoy compatibility on from both possible directions. So it's like, if I'm talking about INTP and ESFJ, then they've got compatibility on the 1-4s, so that the INTP doesn't want to have to think about FE shit a whole bunch. And if the partnership gets along well, then the wife takes it on herself, or I'm assuming the INTP is the dude, The ESFJ takes it upon themselves to, because actually the funny thing is, the actual example I have of this relationship is the INTP is the chick and the ESFJ is the dude. So anyway, the thing is, regardless, with judgers, their first function is always the same kind of function in terms of physicality and metaphysicality. And with perceivers, their first and fourth with their dual is always going to be the opposite kind. So the INFJ ENTP has her 4 is physical, my 4 is physical. My 1 is metaphysical, her 1 is metaphysical. For the INTP and ESFJ, for both of them, their 1 is metaphysical, TI and FE, and their 4 is also metaphysical, TI and FE. So there's that commonality between me and Rachel and an INTP and an ESFJ. If you replace the INFJ with an ISFJ, we lose that common quality. And the thing is, compatibility is about capacity to communicate with the fewest amount of currency exchanges in between. So because I would like to spend in the currency of TI, and I would like to receive in the currency of FE, and Rachel's flipped, that's compatible. But also, if you look at the dominant, I'd like to be a generator of impacts on the metaphysical field, and she'd like to be a receiver of impacts. I'd like to be a thrower of impacts onto the metaphysical field, and she'd like to be a receiver of impacts on the metaphysical field. In contrast, if I'm with an ISFJ, it goes diagonal. I throw to the metaphysical field, but they'd like to receive their impacts on the actual field. So there's a disrespect for each other that grows over time in the perceiver duality relationship that doesn't exist in the judger duality relationship, and that doesn't exist in the perceiver mirage relationship. I don't know if that was informative to you, because it does require you to take my example that wasn't about your type and apply it to yourself. So I would be better able to be understood if I talked about your types instead, but I'd be less able to explain, so it's kind of a trade-off right there, I guess. That's the thing that happens all the time. I use examples that link to me because it makes it a lot easier for me to explain them, but it makes it harder for other people to understand them because they want to understand about themselves, so they have to do a currency exchange between what I'm saying and when they get to understand, right? So, but the thing is, I'm an SI person, so I always start everything with me. Everything starts at the center of the universe, me, and then my experiences, and then they mean things. And then, most importantly, regardless of what they mean, I say things that people hear, and I go, hey, these things I'm saying, they're super good things. You all should say, hey, Eric, your things you're saying are also super good. Because, look, why do you think I try so hard to come up with all these good things to say? It's because I really, really want you to pay attention to me. I'm over here singing and dancing. The parts are looking at me. You know, that's basically the gist of it. Underneath all of that shit, right? All of this fancy talking stuff is number one concern of Eric is I want to make sure you think I'm smart. Obviously, I've spent my entire life attaining that goal to make sure, at the very least, you can't convincingly believe yourself even that I'm a complete idiot. It's just that it's turned out that in order to fake it well enough to get other people to believe that I am smart requires me to withstand scrutiny of people who are actually smart, or else I lose. I lose the game. I lose the battle. I lose the war. At the end of my life, the goal is I'm going to have absolutely everybody in the world fooled. That's my goal. I've been going to spend my entire life trying to fool people into believing that I'm smart. And if I'm going to win life, then when I die, everybody in the world has to perceive me as smart. That's my life arc, okay? That's my destiny. Yeah, exactly. Well, put it this way. I acted smart for so long that I realized you don't have to be especially smart as long as you're smart about how to think. That's the actual truth of it. It doesn't matter how smart you are as long as you're smart about how to think. Because that's going to cascade down. And you want it to go that direction rather than the other direction. Because if you're smart about how to think, then when you're wrong, it's at the most particularist level and has the least splay informationally. And that's when you're most likely to be wrong is at that level, and least likely to be wrong up here where the shit cascades down. Well, I'm saying reproducing multiple examples of an entity is necessary to claim that an entity exists non-uniquely. A single instance is sufficient for unique existence. But the thing is, if something does uniquely exist, it'll still fit into some category. Like genre establishing, defining events do occur, but they don't retain their uniqueness because something that you can establish as one instance of is still an instance of something. So if you want to produce, in other words, look, if you want to say these individual things are instances of a species of animals, These are 3 horses. And these are 3 zebras. And they are different species. If you're actually giving me 6 horses, then when you check the empirics, they're not going to be different. If you're checking across for genetics or something, right? You're going to realize the empirics will tell you, aha, these 6 things are actually all horses. But if the test you're using to determine whether or not these actually are 3 zebras and 3 horses is knowing that zebras are somewhat smaller than horses, and noting that 3 of these horses are somewhat smaller than 3 other of the horses, which are somewhat bigger, and therefore validating that there are in fact 3 zebras and 3 horses, and then working from there, then that's all fruit from the poisonous tree. That's all, whatever you generate from that thing that you've done, because you've not checked first to make sure that the 6 things are actually 3 zebras and 3 horses, rather than just 6 horses. Then you can't be right about whatever conclusions you draw about horses from the commonalities you note about the 6 individual things and the differences between them. You can't be right about zebras and horses. You can only be right. You can't even be right about horses because you think that part of this thing is common between zebras and horses, because you think half of the horses are zebras. So you can't even be right about horses. The thing is, if you can't produce multiple instances of a thing then you can't establish what the thing is that you're claiming exists. You can establish what the thing is that you're claiming exists because it's distinct from other things. This word excludes these things from its coverage. So the point is that when you're talking about like ghosts versus Sasquatches versus whatever, versus giant squids. So ghosts are ghosts; they're like pure paranormal. Sasquatches are half paranormal. Giant squids are non-paranormal; they're just normal. and pigeons are common. Okay. So, what we realize is the reason Sasquatches are half paranormal is because what we're claiming they are isn't magic, but for us to both claim that they exist in a conventional way, then they have to be different from what we're claiming they are. So there's an implicit conflict there in the Sasquatch notion. It is, in fact, not plausible that sustainably large numbers of Sasquatches exist let's say just keep it in North America. It exists in North America, and that the evidence of Sasquatches that we see, photos, pictures of things, whatever, people's testimonials, and the concurrent evidence that you might call evidence against Sasquatch, which is to say that if you were to systematically search a grid of area, you could conclude that at least during the time of the search, from beginning of search to the end, the time when this thing was observed, that there were definitively no Sasquatches in there. Then you can do that. People are always doing that, which is to say, failing to definitively establish that there are Sasquatches in an area of the world in which big apes like that couldn't hide, with a bunch of people out looking for them on a sustained level across the years and years and years, without presenting certain kinds of evidentiary trails, unless they had some kind of magic. So that's what makes it half paranormal. The non-paranormal or normal is explainable because of the difficulty of the medium in which they are from for us to get to it. We don't really get down there. We can just drop hooks down there and grab onto things. Or things will maybe float up from there and come over to the shore on the waves. Yeah, we can acknowledge at some point that absence of evidence is evidence of a necessary ingredient for it to continue to be making its claims. So it's like you can't both say these are regular great apes of huge size that have these other attributes that we commonly associate with Sasquatch, and concurrently say they have no magic and that we should believe in them because of evidence of their existence. You have to also admit that they must have some kind of special existence that's not subject to pinning down, or is able to avoid being pinned down better than we are able to pin it down. That's what I like to call high strangeness. I don't like to call. I didn't make up the term, but somebody else did. Robert Bigelow, I think, or I don't know. He used it. I heard him using it. So. But I like the term. And there are some kinds of high strangeness that are highly strange. I watched a good one. I like that kind of paranormal stuff. I watched a good one yesterday. It's called, what was it called? Let me see if I can figure out what it was called. They ended up going in, trying to get into this canyon / cave system on this ranch in Utah that's very near the Skinwalker Ranch in Utah. It's called the Blind Frog Ranch. Probably what the show's called too. And in Blind Frog Ranch, what you get is a nice confluence of expertise and credibility on varying grounds. So the thing that makes the show compelling mostly is the fact that there's someone there that I trust both emotionally and in terms of his competence. So in other words, I believe I can read this person and that they're authentic. And I can tell that they're genuinely skeptical and very competent at being skeptical. So it's called Mystery at Blind Frog Ranch. Some trippy ass shit goes down, and seeing this geologist who's just like, okay, hold on. Because he clearly was coming in not at all open, really, to things that meant things that couldn't be explained in meaningful explanations. It wasn't so much that he was antithetical towards paranormal shit as he understood that better explanations are better than no explanations, and that paranormality is basically not an explanation. And yet, watching him emotionally engage with the high strangeness, given that foundational nature of his, and my being able to tell both that he's authentically engaging emotionally and intellectually, and continuing to do his best to understand and explain shit, and being like, I mean, this is just, I don't know what to, okay, we gotta do some more tests. It's like, it's compelling in large part because you believe him so much, and because if you are smart, you can tell you've got good reason to trust his role as your voice as a skeptic there. He's not interested in affirming bullshit. So, additionally, there's the stuff you like are presented as visual data by the edits, mutilated animals and so forth. But you wouldn't believe it hadn't all been set up if there weren't believable people believably reacting to it. What's ambiguous? I watched one last night about the Trubontes growing rocks in Romania. That's funny. Do deliberators ever decide anything? Well, sure. We decide what's not good enough. But TI types anyway. TI-1-2 decides what's not good enough, an explanation / justification, and why it's not good enough is something that they can explain. That would be a peacock. The sound of peacocks, yes, their squawking is so loud. It wakes you up and we're not proud to admit that we have to yell at them and say, oh shit, here come peacocks again. Go away, you enormous stupid birds. You'll leave your turds. Go away, please peacocks. And then we shoo 'em with our arms. And then they squawk in their alarms. And finally they flap and rise above into the air, and then they float like gloves, soaring down until they get to the other side of the neighbor's white picket fence of peacocks. Yeah, they're annoying, peacocks. But we have Peter, who comes and visits us twice a day for food, and he's cool because he, generally speaking, he's very polite unless we don't listen to him. He'll come back and give me a little cluck, cluck. If we're not listening to him and obeying his command to give him food, only then does he start yelling at you. So, really, he's a lot nicer than Tiffany. Tiffany yells at me before I even begin the answer to her question. I've already gotten it wrong. She likes to cut off my answers midway. What was I saying? I'm not exactly but neither of us know what it is. That's what I say. How can you need it if you don't even know what it is? I know that. That's all you need to know. I know something. What are you talking to me? No, is there R in here? Can I turn on the R? Sure. Thank you, old man. We finally did something right. Hi, old man. Yes, Tiffany? Who's that guy? His name was like a pile of handkerchiefs? You mean Clayton Kershaw? Yeah. I heard that guy. I had to write him a letter. They're a pile of handkerchiefs. Yo, stink! Tiffany. You should do that, Tiffany. Have I done a guest spot on what? On the Meow 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 show? That's my favorite show too. I love that show. It's the Meow 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 show, starring Meow Meow, with special guests Meow, and musical artists, and universal recording artists Meow 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 Meow. Tiffany can genuinely claim to not be understood and literally be correct. Most people, it's a metaphor. What they mean is people don't grok with them or whatever, you know. Tiffany, people genuinely don't understand what the fuck she's saying. So, she can make that claim. Eric, for something to be unfalsifiable, does it just have to be impossible to demonstrate with current ability, or does proving the claim wrong have to be fundamentally inconceivable or illogical? No, unfalsifiable is different from lacking a falsification mechanism. Unfalsifiable means the claim you're making, it's the second one you said. In other words, your second answer is correct. You don't need to hear me explain your second answer to you. You just explain it to me. It's the second one. If you just can't figure out how to falsify it yet, but it's falsifiable, that's something like plate tectonics, where it's a different explanation, and you intuit that it's correct, but you haven't figured out quite how to demonstrate it definitively yet. Which is really where we are with cognitive functions. We figured out how to demonstrate it pretty definitively, but I've not done sciencey stuff to make it. Like, I'm not a psychiatrist who's maybe a professor on the Harvard psychiatry school something, and also so it's not even conceivable for me to make a big academic impact, because I'm not going to be publishing anything in scientific journals or things like that. And but regardless, we're at the point where currently I'm walking around looking at fault lines and verifying that they all, in fact, are jagged, that I checked, that there are no exceptions. None of them fall inward as would be expected if it were an expanding Earth thing. So just checking to make sure that the one I'm looking at doesn't happen to be anomalous for some reason unrelated to the expansion, the movement of continents, the apparent movement of continents around the world, right? You volunteer to do the sciencey stuff? Okay, good. You do the sciencey stuff. You have at it. You enjoy your sciencey stuff. I'm not a big fan of sciencey stuff. Sciencey stuff is a lot of keeping track of things, writing things down, measuring things precisely, you know. A lot of that stuff in science. Doing statistical analyses. I don't want to do that. Now it's starting to sound like school. I don't like school. School was... School is like, we're telling children the following thing. Here's one thing you could experience in life. Now experience it relentlessly for the next 18 years. It's just fundamentally ill-advised. I was probably just re-explaining, yeah. You don't need me to re-explain it back to you. I just like to NE stuff, which is to say, I like to know it by saying it out loud, myself in my own way, even if I'm just restating what you're saying. I don't know. I should remember to point that out more often, probably. Science can be exhilarating. I'm sure it is for people who like to do those kinds of things or find them rewarding. As soon as you finish booking the fucking appointment, Betting Tips 3000, you were responsible to get that debate set up, to contact Jordan Peterson, make sure he agrees to the day and time, and, tell me the day and time, and I'll send him and his email, and send him the Google Meet link and stuff. Make sure he's going to be there, because I don't want to wait around for his fucking ass. Once you're done setting all that up, then let me know. Oh, wait, you don't want to set that up. You just want to complain about the fact that it doesn't exist. Ooh, you mean the Dr. Stone special episode that's coming out soon? Is it out already? Is it out today? I'm familiar with what you're talking about. I noticed it when I was looking at the Crunchyroll summer lineup yesterday. Well, that's the thing. That's the problem with TE shit, isn't it? Betting Tips 3000. The problem with using extroverted thinking is you just don't have a clear enough sense before you start trying to solve a problem, how long it's going to take to solve it. I don't think it's just a whole new season, Melting Zero. I don't think they're putting out a whole new season. I think they're just putting out like either a movie-length episode or one special episode or something. From what I looked into it yesterday a little bit. But I only spent a little bit of the time that I was looking at Crunchyroll, looking at that particular thing. So I'm not exactly sure. Make sure to have a messy room in the background during the debate. No, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have all my dead dragons piled up behind me to show that, hey, look, I'm arguing against slaying dragons, but it's not because I'm some kind of little bitch you can't slay dragons. That's why I'm surrounded by dead dragons, okay? Dr. Stone is the voice of civilization fighting against the barbarian. Dr. Stone is the triumph of TE over barbarism. But also the triumph of TI over FI. It's not just more effective, it's more just. But from a TE frame, it's kind of a side effect, you might say, of being more... It's understood as necessary, a good way to help yourself be more efficient, rather than as a precondition to your problem-solving mattering. I'll tell you what's mutually exclusive. Me and Mutual of Omaha, I am not doing business with that company ever again. They promised me something wild with their backing of that one nature show that one time. But when I bought their insurance, it wasn't wild at all. It was mild instead. That's why me and Mutual of Omaha are mutually exclusive. You can take that one to the bank and cash it in for a nickel. I've been the voice of America, Eric Strauss, welcoming you to another beautiful day in the land of the free and the home of the brave. Our show today is sponsored by Mutual of Omaha, insurance from Omaha. Now back to our conversation with paranormality expert Judith Thompson. Yes, look, every kind of magic has its own alchemical architecture, okay? What we're looking at in this footage here, it could be a ghost, it could be a portal though, a portal to another dimension. Currently, we have 4 dimensions that we can really know things about, right? You know, meow, meow, meow. And it's time. So it's like another meow. It's like diagonal. It could be a portal from the diagonal dimension. What am I going to do with all of these extra dimensions that are exclusive of any non-mapping reality? How can I begin to perceive not just height, depth, and width, but also length? Length is another dimension that exists, but that there's no way to ever perceive it. So you've got these extra dimensions here on the map, but do they really refer to anything that means something specific? I think it might be a little bit of math masturbation, is what I think. It's either math masturbation or just another word for other universe. If you're going to call it some other universe, why not just call it that, other universe, rather than other dimensions? You can call it another dimension. You're just making people not understand what dimension means. Breadth. Oh, he didn't account for its breadth or its length. Don't melt your betting tips and don't zero out your melts, okay? You can zero your melts, but don't zero your tips and don't bet your zeros. Only bet numbers that aren't zero. Whenever you're placing your bet, it should never be for $0. I bet $0 on the Rams to win the World Series this year. Because even though they don't play baseball, and I'm going to lose, it won't cost me anything. So if you really want to accomplish anything with your betting at all, you can never bet $0. You could accept bets, like somebody comes to you and says, I would like you to take this $100 and give me a piece of paper such that if the Dodgers win the World Series and I come back with this piece of paper, you will give me back not only the $100 I gave you, but an additional $100. Bet the Mets to win the World Series. So you believe that the orange and blue Metropolitans have a better chance of winning this year's World Series than the New York Yankees with their pinstriped outfits? It would seem to me that those two New York teams are possibly the two favorites. Can you answer the negation of that statement? Let me see what you're saying here. Oh, that's not for me. That's for Melting Zero. My bad. I won't try to read things that are not meant for me. Hey, Eric, get your eyes off my private words. I'm talking to Melting Zero. Don't be a turd. I'm sorry, my bad. Did I act? Ooh, it's like you. When in anime, they walk into the room and the lady's naked and changing. But it's totally an accident. Like, stand there and their noses bleed. And then they pretend to not look a lot. But here's the thing. Let's be honest. That naked lady who they accidentally walk on changing is always especially worth looking at. It's like the amount of luck that people in anime get when they walk in on naked ladies. The amount of incredibly attractive young busty women, proportion of that for the total number of times that they walk in on women is extraordinarily high. Much higher than real life. If you were to, in real life, walk in on somebody changing, most of the time, almost always, it's not going to be an attractive young woman who's extremely well proportioned and alluringly ashamed of you seeing her nudity. Almost never is that going to be the case. And yes, it's because you didn't take lessons, Melting Zero. That's why you're not seeing enough naked ladies. Everybody loves looking at naked ladies when they don't have any clothes on. Hey, wanna come with me? I'm gonna look at naked ladies 'cause they don't have any clothes on. So anyway, I went to this place and first I couldn't believe my own eyes. I said, those ladies, I can see them, and concurrently, they're naked. I mean, they did not have any clothes on. So I did a double take. Wah, 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 wah. Only to, sure enough, it was no dream. My eyes weren't deceiving me. Throughout this entire little area here were naked ladies. Rupert and I approached cautiously. Rupert, I said, have you seen what I am currently looking at? Are you seeing what I am seeing? And Rupert said, if you're talking about the naked ladies, I sure am, Governor. Because I am his governor. And then we crouched behind a bush. And I said, Rupert, be quiet. I'm observing these things in their native environment. Rupert, your nose is bleeding. Why? Oh, I hate to be the bearer of bad news, sir, but have you checked your own nose? Bleeding? These naked ladies, they seem to be wet, soapy even. What do you suppose is going on here, Rupert? And the answer is that we're in an anime and they're Japanese ladies in the bath. And we're trying to spy on them, except our noses keep bleeding. There's basically your anime scene. Your standard anime scene there. There are variants on it. You know, usually it ends with another girl who's not in the bath discovering that Rupert and that other guy looking at the girls who are in their bath, and then they get beaten up by the girl who sees them. And they get accused of being hentai, which is an all-purpose word meaning perverted, of the perversive nature. Everything in the whole realm of thing, they just have one word for it. Hentai. They call people hentai, they call media hentai. It's like, get some modifiers already. Come on now, Japanese. Why is everything so... Why do you say so much in so few words? Are you really saying much if you have so few words? Don't you want to have a word that means pervert that's different from perverted? So it's like, you're a pervert is different than that's perverted. Although we might use them equivalently. Regardless, Japan, have you really thought about the issue of perversion sufficiently if you only have one word for it? Probably not. That's what I'm saying. But you keep borrowing English words for basic concepts. Like, did you not have those concepts until after World War II? Like timing. Is there not a Japanese word for timing? English is malleable because it's made out of meat. If you want a malleable language, you gotta make it out of ground beef. You can shape it into whatever shape you want. Look, Mama, I've written my signature in ground beef. Let's fry it up, and then we'll have that as the centerpiece in our holiday feast. Instead of a turkey this year, Eric's written out his own signature in ground beef. And we will all eat it. Yeah, it's important for you to have a really beefy signature, so that people don't think you're a wuss or something. Yes, purely with the info of that statement, no, because it could be negated by you not being able to speak Japanese, but we basically saw that wasn't true with your messages, so the only way to negate it is by... Yeah, I'm not really making claims about Japanese. I don't know enough about it to know enough about it, but I do know that I don't know. Her lack of discrimination between this kind of flower and that kind of flower is not inherently a problem. It's just, she's just out there picking flowers. Just let her pick some flowers. I'm that little girl. My name's Deborah. I like flower picking. Why are you harassing a little girl? You stutter and lag. It's red now. I don't even know if it's working. What's going on here? What's all this then? Looks like we're out of luck. I guess I gotta reset the internet before I type that lady or gentleman. I don't remember if it's a gentleman this morning or a lady. Ladies and gentlemen, though my name is not gentleman, I've got to go, 'cause this thing's so slow. The end.